in your world, then you are going to be impacted in that direction, because their lives, they've made their lives so dedicated to making something positive out of that horrible experience. And when we had the celebration of 40 years for Get Oil Out, the same, because it started right after the oil spill, they were marking on 40 years since, and we were marking that anniversary. But then what will the next 40 years bring? And that's what I was trying to get to in my final remark, was that that was a huge event and changed a lot of things. It was one of the events in the early 70s that created this whole basis of law. Now we have and it's a different kind of threat, because it's not one cataclysmic event like the oil spill in the Gulf was. We didn't see this kind of reaction yet. We haven't yet. But this climate change issue and the impact on the ocean is even more devastating because you don't see it overnight. You don't. Gradual. It's so gradual. We don't see it here, even though it will surely affect our way of life also.
That's one of the reasons why the Ormond Beach wetlands are so important.
Yes,
they're the only wetlands in central to southern California that has the capacity to migrate, because they're surrounded by agriculture land. All the other wetlands are hemmed in with development.
I didn't realize that.
And that if you would consider weighing in with the city of Oxnard on the issue, because they are wetlands of national significance, the Navy in the past has said that they don't want that. They would like the South Shore development area to remain open because of potentially be encroachment on the base. And the other thing is that you helped the city of Oxnard get the funding for the GREAT program.
Oh, yeah.
And then if through the South Shore project, if the money from the GREAT program becomes used to, Ormond Beach is fragile and it can't support, intense residential area so close to it will put dogs
This
and
was being
children
discussed yesterday, right?
right in the area of the nesting birds, and it will cease to be habitat. So it's not a good place for that kind of intensive
Well, it sounds like the Navy doesn't think it is either.
No. And Doss Williams weighed in. We know generally you don't weigh in on local issues, but Tim Flynn thinks it's important for the other city council people to hear from persons a little further up the line.
Well, we can think about ways we can do that. I think there are ways we can, and that's why, one of the reasons why Rachel is involved, and will be more involved even though she's based here.
Right,
It's interesting that the coastline is such a unifying theme throughout this area. Of course, the district boundaries are going to change because of the redistricting that is, even as we speak, occurring. But was it, you tell me you were at the Beacon? No, somebody at the city was. The sands shift up and down the coast, and the ecosystem is very interconnected as well. So we want this thing to be, and then we have Diablo Canyon and the environmental impacts of that. Should something awful happen there, would certainly be felt this way. There's a way we can make our presence impacting on that decision. But it sounds to me like there's a great deal of the public is concerned about it.
Yeah. It's
there's just
can't recreate what's there. It's the remnant. But the last thought is that it's just starting to move, and Rachel forward the idea of getting Ormond as part of the national park, so that it's unifying the Channel Islands National Park, the Santa Monica Mountains National recreation area, and Magoo and Ormond in between. They're all one ecosystem, you know, the birds fly from the islands.
It's a little like the Gaviota Coast.
Right. And, but if
If
that
South Shore thing comes in,
place right in the middle, you know, ceases to be able to sustain the, you know, the more fragile, you know, the more vulnerable species, then you kind of lost the heart of it.
you've
Well,
given me.
I spoke to Al Sanders about that yesterday and then also a couple of weeks ago, and he has a national expert that is going to be coming in to kind of help put a framework together of what kind of national, if the national designation would be
Appropriate.
and what kind of designation. So we're going to stay in contact and keep talking about that, but I let him know that, you know, we wouldn't be looking to do kind of a top-down approach on that, that it would need to be a grassroots effort.
Yeah, that's
for the local.
we just have these sort of unwritten rules about turf.
Interfering with local government.
Yeah, and I don't think my constituents want me to do that either in many respects, even though I get asked a lot to weigh in on different positions. I think there are other ways to be influential there, and
That would be very helpful.
I will find, we'll
Appreciate
find
it.
some way to do that.
And
If we can.
appreciate your time.
Oh,
with this
I'm
very
just
much.
delighted to know the connection between you and the California Council for the Humanities. See, my husband taught religious studies, but he was very interested in the National Endowment for the Humanities. I'm very involved in that. And then the California Endowment is a piece of, each state has one. It's Council for the Humanities. It's not an endowment. Each state has a Council for the Humanities, and different projects each state has. And there's a little funding stream, although boy, are we sure wrecking havoc with that too, like we are with all the environmental stuff. So it's pretty much frozen right now in terms of opportunities to do more. But they've had, and so my husband, when it was created, was on the board and helped to choose the previous head of it, and then Jim Quay, he just retired a couple of years ago, and lo and behold, this young friend of ours was working in the office and applied for the position and
Wow.
got it.
Wonderful.
And he's in his 40s, but they have great, they just do great projects, don't they?
I know, because
Well,
I've funded me three times.
Oh,
have they?
Yes, two
and we're
previous
hoping that,
documentaries and now this
We're
one.
hoping that this will lead to a longer version of what we're doing in this one, funded
Yeah.
by them. So we'll make sure that the young gentleman gets one so that he can see.
Ralph.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
for
Ralph
certain.
Bloom, yeah.
And
Well, he will.
the other idea that besides we definitely want to make sure that any California teacher who wants a copy of this can get it.
Mm-hmm.
That's basic.
Right.
The other thing that we'd like to do with it is take it a road show around the Gulf, you know. Show this to the people in the Gulf. This is what Californians did with their oil spill. You know, you can't, you can only suggest, but the fact that it was possible, that people, you know, that,
Well, I didn't say this, but I didn't, and when looking at the questions that you sent out originally, my press secretary got this statement, which is probably true. I believe I'm probably the only member of Congress who has offshore platforms in my district and is opposed to new development.
thank you.
Oh, good.
That's
Well,
wonderful.
Actually, that's going to be the introduction to your part in the documentary.
And because, I mean, all the Gulf states have, Senator Landrieu voted against.
No, I know Landry did, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you see why they do. We are just, I feel blessed here. And you know that I'm not this outstanding person on my own. It's that Charlie Eck, all these people have sort of created this climate where it's not that, and it's not 100%, believe me, there are lots of constituents who write regularly to the papers and say, we should be drilling more offshore because the gas prices are so high. First of all, there's no correlation.
No correlation.
No
But
correlation,
people,
yes, we know.
but that's the motive.
The
That's
conservative media has just drowned out
Well,
any
some of your questions
logical
were
interaction.
about has it changed in Congress. I'm glad we didn't get into that because I don't like
No, I
to
know.
point
No.
fingers.
No.
But the truth is, I've been in Congress 12 years, which is surprising now to me to realize I'm no longer the new kid on the block. When I was first elected, we had a lot of environmental Republicans. I didn't want to talk partisan in this, and that's why I didn't want to get into it.
understand that, you know.
But I can, Wayne Gilchrist was a really dear friend of mine. It represented as a Republican, a moderate Republican, which is an oxymoron now too
Anymore, yeah.
in Congress. But he represented a district in Maryland that's part of the Chesapeake Bay Sanctuary or is it a sanctuary? Anyway,
Yeah, it's huge.
The
Estuary.
estuary.
Yeah.
Estuary. That's where I'm
And he got reelected every cycle because he stood for the environment.
People in the Chesapeake,
And I could do legislation with him. He got a primary opponent two cycles ago. He's no longer in Congress. Sherry Bullard retired, but I knew him. Chris Shays, they're no longer there now. And they are Republicans, conservative Republicans.
But still.
Strong on the
environmentally
environment.
conscious. We're experiencing, I lived in
You can't be
Virginia.
environmental and
And
be a Republican now.
We're experiencing the same thing because our new governor has asked for offshore leases. And Virginians just we've never had to deal with this before. We just assumed it's not going to happen off Virginia. And now it is, and the reaction has been really slow and cumbersome. And I'm kind of concerned that before we know it, there's going to
Well,
be
you have two
platforms.
Virginias, don't you?
We have the
The Northern
Right,
Industrial.
northern, well, it's not even
Shouldn't have-
industrial,
You want
it's,
me to turn
it's,
this
it's
Yeah.
outside government.
Turn
We're-
these.
Like Sir Moran, it's
Right, exactly.
those
So-
Democrats.
So
And then
we're
you
the
have real
northern,
conservative.
down from Richmond south and west. And then it gets in, the area that I've moved to is actually very conservative. I worked for the Obama campaign in the last election in Hart County. We didn't win the county, but we did win Northern Virginia, which is the first time that Northern Virginia.
That's why
and
it's a
so-
very swing state. But
Yeah.
where people live, as migration is changing the
Mhm.
electoral
That's
politics.
Right. That's right, and that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that the Republican talk machine has seemed to have offended every form of minority, whether it's women or African Americans or Hispanics,
Hispanics.
and I'm thinking to myself, how do you
Stupid.
think you're going to win the election
Especially.
when you keep offending all blue collars, middle class? You know, I just don't. I don't understand.
Well, and we have to hope that with the Medicare thing, they've